Hello and welcome to Utter Punts. What a weekend of NFL football we had. Look, I've got Dave and Jim with us. Ollie's not bothered because student. And look, there is only one place to start, and that was an incredible game of football between the Chiefs and the Bills that may potentially have been overshadowed by a couple of iffy calls, Dave.
Yeah, okay, so we've been quite forthcoming in the way we've been viewing the Chiefs games, but quite honestly, that wasn't as bad as it has been. It felt like there was actually a attempt to abide by the actual rules. Apart from, obviously, the first down should have been a first down. One ref called it a first down, the other called it short. For some reason, they decided the call on the field was the short one. Had it been the other way round, the decision would have actually remained as a first down for the Bills because there wouldn't have been video evidence showing that it was short. So it's an unfortunate one, and the NFL should probably be able to invest in some form of ball tracking technology a little bit better than the human eye from 15, 20 yards away. The other one, though, the catch, it wasn't a catch. It wasn't a catch.
But it was.
I mean, it was called a catch, but you're not meant to use the floor to help you catch the ball. And because that's how it's written. So if you think about it...
No. I get you. I'm just going to disagree. That's all. I just think that the ball is under control by the time it hits the floor. And you can tell that because the ball doesn't move when it makes contact with the floor.
But he has to change hands.
When?
Straight after that. So the slowed down bit that you've seen cuts off, and then he actually changes hands. He has to. He doesn't actually have control of the ball. Is that just a
passing off control?
No, not the way the rule is written. The way the rule is written is the ground is not allowed to aid you in the catch. So therefore,
what I'm saying is it didn't. He's just passing the ball from one hand to the other after he's made the catch.
At that point, the catch is not secured. So until the catching motion is completed, then in theory, the catch is not complete. So it's like a case of if you take a step with the ball, then the catching motion is considered completed and can be knocked out for a fumble. But in that situation with the Chiefs, it was a. I don't think it was as
at no point
as
had
it
he
could have been,
managed.
to be perfectly honest.
So at no point had he gathered the ball in a way where it would have been constituted a catch. And so you can't give that as a completion. I know what they've done. They've interpreted it the same way you have, Lynn. But, for example, if a quarterback were to dump a ball off to a running back, and the running back were to get both palms of the ball on top of the ball, and in his motion to catch it, so the ball doesn't move, but it touches the floor, that's not a catch. Right? And that's all that has happened with Worthy, is that exact incident, but with one hand while someone was tackling him. So for me, if you're applying the rules as they're written, it wasn't a catch. Having said that, it was a penalty anyway.
Is this the rules' fault then, Jim? In the fact that it's not clear enough. Should the rule just say if the ball touches the floor at any point during a catch, it's incomplete? And control should just be taken out of it.
I do think that the rule doesn't help anybody. I think every season that we've watched, there's been one or two situations in important games where people have either claimed a catch or it's been ruled not a catch and it's been a catch. And to be honest, it's just leaving it too much open to interpretation. And unfortunately, the interpretation for most referees when the Chiefs are playing is advantage Chiefs in that situation. I actually didn't have a major issue with the call, to be honest, because I think if you were calling that as an incompletion, you probably call in, there's probably 3 or 4 of those plays a game where a receiver's picking the ball up off the floor because it's been thrown low, that you could call an incompletion. So I wasn't that, I didn't feel like the Bills got chiefed there, to be honest. I think that's just one of those plays that's open to it. It's like you said, the rules. That rule is very much open to interpretation, and it's just a situation where it goes for you sometimes, it goes against you sometimes. The magnifying glass is always on the Chiefs because of their favourable referee calls, and as a result of that, it's something that you can get on board and say, "Oh, here we go again." To be honest, the far worse call was that fourth down conversion from Josh Allen, where the touch judge that could see the ball marked it as a first down, and the judge on the other side of the field who could not see the ball under any circumstances marked it short. How they then got to the point where they meet in the middle of the field and are clearly half a yard apart in their markings for the one who saw the ball to move back to the Chiefs. And the thing was as well with that call, it was very difficult to see the ball. So in terms of a challenge, it wasn't really challengeable in that sense, because it was called not a first down on the field unless there's clear evidence to overturn that call. Which, to be honest, from the TV replays that we saw, there wasn't. That was a bigger example of the Chiefs getting favourable calls. There was another one that probably didn't.
It was another conversion, wasn't it? Was it another third or fourth down conversion where is it Kincaid that makes the dive, looks to get all the way back to the 40-yard line, and they actually mark it a yard short of the 40-yard line. Is that the call you're talking about?
Yeah, there was that call, but there was a couple of other calls as well that were in there. There was one, I actually saw a replay of a play this morning, and it was Josh Allen who was rolling out to his right, and he's pointing at the Chiefs defensive back, actually holding Amari Cooper. And he's holding him, and then he threw the ball, and I think he threw a completion anyway. It wasn't to that receiver, but it was a difference between a 20-yard conversion and a 5-yard conversion. And that's another example of, like I said, Dave summed it up pretty well. It wasn't the usual barrage of Chiefs favourable calls. I think they got 2 or 3 that were favourable, which, to be honest, when you're at home, you're more likely to get those calls than you are for the away team, let's put it that way. And I think my Browns don't benefit from that because we don't win enough games, but the Vikings have definitely had a few favourable calls this season. I think it's just one of those home team advantage, and it's so difficult to stop that Chiefs tidal wave, and even the Bills fell to it.
I thought it was highly interesting that the NFL decided to release a statement saying that they've selected the crew that was statistically least favourable towards the Chiefs specifically for that game. Because what they've inadvertently done there is acknowledge the fact that all the other officials are clearly skewed towards the Chiefs. Because you can look at it from a statistics perspective. And I think before this game, in the fourth quarter, in key moments in the game, blah 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 blah, the Chiefs had given up 47 penalties and opponents had only got 48. Right, so it's really, in this game
really
close.
It was 5 penalties for the Chiefs and 6 for the Bills. Like it was really tight. And if we're going to be really honest, there's a clear face mask on the Chiefs as well that should have been given. That would have brought it to 6 apiece.
Yep. 100%. And this is the thing, when you only start looking for it going one way, that's all you find. You do have to kind of sit there and go, well, what's human error and what's not? And I didn't see anything that made me go, that's not human error. I just saw a couple of process issues, primarily the judge who could see the ball kowtowing to a man who couldn't, and that's about it really. But one of them.
It shouldn't take away from the game itself, I think, either, because the game itself was a really good game between 2 really good football teams. I thought Josh Allen looked better than Patrick Mahomes throwing the football, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought he created more. He looked younger, faster, and that Bills offense really. I mean, we've joked about the Chiefs not having anyone to throw to in over previous weeks, and then as I'm watching the game, it suddenly dawned on me that they've got a first-round pick in Hollywood Brown, a first-round pick in DeAndre Hopkins, and Juju Smith-Schuster, who once upon a time was a very, very serviceable number 2 wide receiver. And you know, the Chiefs created. I mean, they've got the retread of Kareem Hunt and the ghost of him as well, and they've turned him back into a starting running back. So
Xavier Worthy, mate.
Yep, Xavier Worthy creating plays. Ironically, the Bills traded out of the first, traded down with the Chiefs, so the Chiefs could select Xavier Worthy. Is that a move that they now regret? Probably.
They also traded back with the Panthers, and the Panthers took Xavier Legette, and the Bills ended up taking Keon Coleman, who has been decent, but didn't. Like neither him nor Amari Cooper were winning. Yeah, but he didn't win a single one-on-one that I saw. I didn't watch the game live, so I took my time over yesterday, and I was having a look for him just to see what was going on there. And Amari Cooper was held a few times, but Coleman just couldn't get himself to separate.
He's a contested catch monster, Keon Coleman, and the game wasn't a contested catch game. Josh Allen was finding space all over the field, apart from Keon Coleman. So I think Khalil Shakir put in a really good performance for the Bills as well. He made a couple.
He's their best wide receiver, I think.
I agree. But yeah, ultimately, a really good game. Not spoiled by the officiating decisions. Probably spoiled by Dalton Kincaid dropping a dolly drop on the fourth down at the end of that game.
Right, the last play. Yeah, I thought that. I thought the same. Does this go to show just how good the Chiefs are? You know, we love the Bills. I love the Bills. I've enjoyed watching them all season long. I think Josh Allen's excellent. But they find a way to win the Chiefs every single time. Every single time they find a way to scramble themselves over the line, and you've got to give that credit, haven't you?
This is 100%. The best Chiefs defence that Mahomes has had. And as Jim pointed out, they actually have a little bit of an embarrassment of mid-level wide receivers, which is better than bad wide receivers. And they're mid to good for the most part, with one of them having potential to be a game changer. They're really good, and Patrick Mahomes is special. He's already won 3 Super Bowls. He's going to win a 4th, unless they can't stop Saquon Barkley. It won't be Jalen Hurts who beats Patrick Mahomes.
No, more on the Philadelphia Eagles very, very shortly. But first up, let's instead just finish off with the Chiefs, who will be wearing white away jerseys in the Super Bowl. That has been confirmed, so they won't be in their normal red, they'll be in white. They go in as favourites, I would suggest. We'll do our full Super Bowl preview next week on Utter Punts, but just a quick word on whether the three-peat's actually going to happen. Dave?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
All right, cool. That was really quick for you, wasn't it?
I might change my mind by next week, but right now...
Look, 55 points by the Eagles. We'll talk about the Eagles in a minute, but 55 points on that Washington defence by the Eagles is no joke. One final thing on the Chiefs. Shout out to DeAndre Hopkins. He's played for some absolutely terrible franchises over his career in the NFL. Now he plays for one of probably the most hated franchise in the NFL, but he's going to be making his first Super Bowl appearance, which I think is a real achievement for him, and obviously shows that actually taking less money to join a contender can work out for some people. So DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in the league, probably over the last 10 years, deserves his flowers going to the Super Bowl.
1 and 11 for yesterday. 1 catch for 11 yards. That's not bad at all, really, all things considering. Just a final word on this game before we move on, and that's fumbles, because we're going to be talking about that quite a lot, aren't we, in the next bit that we do between the Commanders and the Eagles. The difference really was how many times that Buffalo turned the ball over cheaply like that. I think there were 4 fumbles in the game, and just not what you need against the Chiefs side that are decent.
Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame probably. I think if they win another Super Bowl, I think that will be his 5th, which means he'll have won more than Reid. So, yeah, I mean, he was dialing up things that they weren't expecting. There were some blitzes coming from cornerbacks. On the pass that Dalton Kincaid dropped, it was actually a corner blitz that came from an uneven front. So they'd loaded up on the right-hand side with 4, and Allen decided it was fine for him to roll out to the side where 3 were, but what they actually did was pivot back a safety to cover the wide receiver and just send the cornerback through on the blitz from that side. So suddenly there were 5 coming when previously they'd been blitzing him only with 4, and Allen got hurried, had to throw it up, and Kincaid failed to come down with the ball. It's such a good Chiefs defense, but can they stop the run when it's been,
Yeah, I mean, look, Chris Jones from the Chiefs lived in the Bills' backfield for the whole game. And Dave's hit the nail on the head. That Chiefs defense is special. I think Trent McDuffie, as their top cornerback, is probably one of the top 3 cornerbacks in the league at the moment. So I think, when the Chiefs go through that, I think like we've said, the big piece against the Eagles will be, can they stop Saquon Barkley? But, how many games do you watch and a team that loses the turnover battle actually wins the game? The answer's very few. I don't have the actual numbers, but, and if there's a team that's good enough to come away from a game having lost the turnover battle and to get that close, it's the Bills. But yeah, coughing up that football so cheaply at times was an absolute killer. You've got a couple of shady decisions that didn't go your way. There was one decision on Josh Allen which could have been another fumble, but that wasn't called a fumble. So yeah, I think ball security is absolutely key for every team. And ultimately, if you do win that turnover battle, probably 8 times out of 10 at least, if not 9 times out of 10, you're going to win that game. So I think the Chiefs have themselves to blame on this one. Dalton Kincaid dropping that final pass was an absolute killer for them. But again, credit to Spagnuolo and Kansas City. Tony Romo's one of Tony Romo's big skills is calling out the defense before it actually calling out the play and the defense before it happens. And he was sitting there going, "You're not rushing that guy. You're not rushing this guy. You're not rushing that guy." And every time he said that guy rushed. So I thought it was quite funny to watch in that sense. But yeah,
there was a total flip because I was watching the Commanders-Eagles game, which we'll talk about in a minute, which had Tom Brady on the coverage, and he was the exact opposite. He went full Tony Romo and called everything down right down the middle. It was absolutely brilliant.
He was brilliant, wasn't he?
Yeah, we'll talk more about this in a minute because he was. I think he's come into his own as the season's progressed, as he's got a little bit more experience and he's learnt on the job. Speaking of ball security and turnovers, guess what we're talking about next? It's the Commanders against the Eagles on Utter Punts after this. Here at Utter Punts, we love watching the NFL with friends, and in our opinion, there's no better place to grab a bite to eat and watch the NFL than Beer Keller in Manchester. The burgers are massive, there's loads of HD screens, the wings are great, and there's a superb choice of drinks behind the bar too. Most importantly for us though, the people are brilliant, like-minded NFL fans who want to enjoy the game and have a laugh. It's definitely one of the best venues to watch your favourite team in. Yes, welcome back to Utter Punts. We've spoken about the Chiefs and the Bills. It's time to turn attention to the other game that was played on Sunday, which was equally as entertaining, but maybe not quite in the same way. It ended up Washington Commanders 23, Philadelphia Eagles 55. Jim, this was a real story of errors, and more errors at the wrong time from the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, absolutely. It just looked like the Commanders folded a little bit under pressure, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think you can put the blame on Jaden Daniels' shoulders.
No.
I think Jaden Daniels operated his offense in the best that he could in that situation. But ultimately, all of those sort of secondary options that the Chiefs showcased so well against the Lions in the previous week, not the Chiefs, the Commanders showcased against the Lions the previous week, went missing in this game. And if they weren't missing, they were in the news for the wrong reasons. Like we said, that ball security pieces around that. It was difficult to watch because myself, Dave, and one of our good friends watched it all together, and we were to a man supporting the Commanders in that game. and we realised very, very quickly, probably in the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, that this was not going to be pretty. But I don't think anyone could have expected the Eagles putting a 50 burger on.
As soon as Saquon took his first play to the house, you were like, so whatever plan you had isn't working. What's plan B? And I think he only ended up having, was it 8 or 9 rushes on the night for 113 yards and 3 touchdowns.
15 carries, 118 yards, an average of 7.9 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns, and his longest run was 60 yards. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing, really.
Me and Dave are fairly similar in the sense that we're proponents of not paying your running back most of the time, if not all of the time. So I think, whilst we saw, you can't not see what Saquon Barkley's got. When that contract got announced that it was $15.5 million a year on a 3-year contract, we both went, what? In that sense. So, but at the same time,
only in terms of the cap it.
Yeah.
But then when we saw what Henry assigned to the Ravens for, I thought it was good value because it wasn't.
And Josh Jacobs to the Packers was on a very similar number as that,
which
as well.
I didn't understand because Barkley and McCaffrey are the best 2 backs in the league, and McCaffrey now has, what is it, a degenerative issue with the tendons in his legs. So Saquon's the best back in the league by a mile.
Yeah. And I think when you throw in the fact that they've got Devontae Smith and AJ Brown on the outside, the Eagles' offense was absolutely humming from the first play of the game all the way through the game. The Commanders could not get to grips with them. And I think when you look, you touched on the Saquon Barkley 60-yard run. That Washington interior defensive line is no joke. It's got Jonathan Allen and the other guy in there who's been really good. I can't remember what his name is, but he's been really good this year. And Jonathan Allen's a former first-round pick.
Are you on about is it Loku, the guy kept going offside trying to start?
I think he's a linebacker.
Yeah.
I particularly enjoyed that, to be honest with you, the defensive encroachment 4 times in a row from the 1 yard line.
That sort of 4-minute spell was just special, wasn't it? Because what you got was the officials coming on and going, we've had enough now, one more time, and we could award the score. And I was just like, yeah, come on, do it one more time, just for shits and giggles.
Well, the thing was, it got to a point where the ball was 3 yards out, three inches outside the end zone. You might as well have just kept doing it and just took it, because if you can't, you're playing against the Eagles. They've got Saquon Barkley, they've got Jalen Hurts, they've got those receivers. They were going to score that touchdown from 3 inches out. So
what was unbelievable was how many times they'd actually thwarted the brotherly shove. Up until that point,
because
they
of him
defended it
timing
so well.
Yeah. But he was gambling on the same tactic working. But what was interesting was apparently, I heard this on the O-line committee, apparently for the final one, when they went back up to the line, they went up there with no play called. They knew he was just going to come offside, so they didn't even bother deciding what play they were going to run. They had a huddle and went, no play, no, just stand up. And when I go hut on the second hut, he's going to come again. So, yeah, but they knew, they were amused by it. And this is the underrated aspect of Jalen Hurts, because it's very easy to sort of drag him down based on the fact that he doesn't put up the passing numbers and he does appear to be primarily a running back. And that is a limited shelf life. If you can't adapt to sit in the pocket, look at Cam Newton, right? It doesn't go well in the long run. So I do hope that he kind of adjusts his game a little bit, but at the moment he's just handing the ball off to Saquon, and I think most people could do that.
You're absolutely right.
But he's a very smart guy. Like in terms of reading the actual film, understanding what the opposition are doing, he's really, really intelligent, and yeah, he's very underrated.
He's also being carried through for me by the play calling, because when Saquon was being double teamed, he had options with Goddard, Gainwell, Pickett, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown.
Will Shipley, I think, rather than Gainwell.
Always,
Gainwell was injured.
There was always someone available to him. Yeah. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah,
It was the polar opposite to what we saw Washington do last week, to be honest. And we spoke about how the Lions had struggled against Dan Quinn defenses. The Eagles, on the other hand, have not struggled against Dan Quinn defenses. So I think it showed the Commanders up a little bit for being a little bit one-dimensional in their defensive play and not being able to make the adjustments. The only positive adjustment I really saw from the Commanders over the course of the game was that stopping the brotherly shove. I think the Eagles got a couple of first downs or even a touchdown off it early in the game. And then after that, the Commanders had pretty much shut most of it down at that point. But I think we do need to remember the Eagles were playing with a backup centre for the majority of the game. And only later on in their sort of halfway through the third quarter did their starting, is it Jurgens, come in to finish the game. And ironically, the Eagles' offensive line play improved a lot once he came in, despite the fact he was only on one leg, to be fair to him. So I think Commanders need to go back to the drawing board. I don't think they need a couple more offensive pieces. Brian Robinson was shut down as a running back pretty much for the Commanders, and nobody outside of Scary Terry McLaurin really hit the stat sheet for the Commanders.
but the wide receiver Brown, actually,
Arnie Brown.
Yeah, he had a nightmare after having had a great coming out game against the Lions.
But then so did Austin Eckler, and you think to yourself, oh look, they're in a really good spot. But then I saw Eckler make 3 or 4 mistakes. The worst one being not securing the football as he was getting back to his feet. And Tom Brady was brilliant on this because he was on colour commentary, he immediately came on and went, that's something that we targeted Austin Eckler about, knowing that when he was getting up off the floor, he wasn't able to secure the ball. And that whole piece from Brady on commentary for that section of the game I thought was brilliant.
Exceptional. I mean, I'm biased in his favour, but I thoroughly enjoyed it because it's easy to defend someone who's doing a good job, and he was calling things out. He was showing his past experience when there was a drive down the field with a couple of seconds left on the clock. He started talking about the fact that Drew Brees always liked to have 12 seconds left on the clock if he was going to try and run a play, whilst Brady thought it was more 14, 15 seconds. And I don't know if it's just the fact that he's relaxed into the role, or it's the fact that he's not allowed in the meetings before the games because he's an owner of the Raiders, which means he just does his own thing and says what he wants now. I don't know what it is, but he's doing a really, really good job.
I have an inherent dislike for Tom Brady, mainly because he's a scummy blue nose. That is a huge issue that I have with him. Having said that, he is comfortably the best colour commentator in sports at the moment, and that's bar none. That's across the Premier League, Champions League, basketball, NFL. If my kids haven't got the TV, I'll watch it all. So I think Tom Brady, just the way he breaks down the game, we were talking about Tony Romo. I really enjoyed Tony Romo as well, calling out players and calling out specifics around blitzes, but he missed on a few of the Chiefs. Tom Brady did not miss a single play, a single defensive call, a single time management call. It was unbelievable. And you're sitting there going, you're a colour commentator. You're heading up the Raiders coaching search or whatever you do.
He did a cracking job with that as well, Pete Carroll. I know he's old, but if you want a culture changer, bring in the man who generates
more coaching coming for you in a little while on Utter Punts.
To be honest, you just think but you're listening to Tom Brady and you're going like, you're calling games much better than half the league's head coaches call games. As a minimum, half the league, if not probably 24 out of 32. And this is your first year on the job in terms of colour commentary. Started off a bit sticky in week one, ironically a bit of a deer in the headlights, which I don't think we would have really seen coming. But after that first week, he really settled down, and then now we're into the business end of the season. Tom Brady, I hope, is commentating on the Super Bowl, because if he's not, that'll be a huge miss for me, because I really enjoy listening to him, and I'd encourage any NFL fans out there that are just getting into the game to tune into a Tom Brady game and how he breaks down the live film for you, and then take it back after that and realise how well he's actually called that play, because realistically he doesn't miss a beat. And that is like I said, I have had no love for Tom Brady, but I've got a lot of respect for him as a colour commentator.
I'm just trying to figure out who's got the Super Bowl this season and whether or not
New
we've actually
Orleans.
got the.
Oh,
No, no, no.
it's in New Orleans.
No. So basically, Wikipedia, obviously be careful using Wikipedia because sometimes it's not right, will give you a full list of who the host broadcaster is and who's going to be used as the co-commentator. I can tell you that it's on Fox with Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady as the colour commentator. So good news
Excellent.
for all involved.
I definitely think so. I imagine there'll be an awful lot of people who hear us say this who think we're completely wrong. I would suggest that you formed your opinion early. You haven't actually listened.
Yeah, go back and listen.
Yeah.
Go back and listen. Any more to say on Eagles Commanders before we just have a look at whether or not the Eagles stand any chance at all of getting something together against the Chiefs?
Just that ball security thing again, really. We spoke about it briefly. We spoke about it in the previous game. And again, the team that lost the turnover battle lost the game with the turnover. And I think the Eagles scored 21 points off the back of Commanders' turnovers. And when you're in this...
Was it 4 turnovers they scored off or just the 3?
I think they scored off 3 and maybe a field goal. But I can't remember.
I think they converted all of the turnovers into touchdowns.
And I mean that when you look at it, that's pretty much the difference in the scores. When you look at it, either way, 3, 4. You know, once you're in that sort of range, it's not that important when you're playing against good football teams like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to punish you for that, and the Commanders did get punished. I said Jayden Daniels didn't play badly. I maintain Jayden Daniels didn't play badly. So I don't have it. On to the next one. Hopefully he doesn't see the famed sophomore slump next year. And I think if the Commanders can spend a little bit of money in free agency and do a little bit in the draft and get some more supporting players in for him, maybe figure out how to get a few different looks on defense, I think the Commanders could well be mainstays in the playoffs for a few years to come, which I know their former owner Dan Snyder absolutely hates. He hates the fact that the Commanders have gone on a run the first year after he's been out. Bearing in mind, owned the team for 20 years before.
Fantastic Schadenfreude. If anyone deserves it, is Dan Snyder.
Agreed.
Here's a question for you. What do the Eagles need to do to stand a chance against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl on February the 9th? Like, for me, it would be making sure that those options are there for up front for them. So again, we spoke before, didn't we, about how they needed to make sure that they had Saquon Barkley and an option in Gainwell and an option in AJ Brown and an option in... If they get that right, I think that probably gives them a chance against the Chiefs. Any extension on that? What do you think?
I think Jalen Hurts needs to be fitter and more and healthier for that game. Because when you saw Jalen Hurts actually get on the move, he caused the Commanders quite a lot of problems. I think he ran in a touchdown, ran in maybe a 2-point conversion or something else. But it was. But I think that's where the Chiefs are going to stack the box against the Eagles. 2 high safeties for the majority of it. They're going to go man to man on their wide receivers because they've got one of the top 3 corners in the league, as we discussed. So it's all going to be about the Eagles finding that extra man and that spare man to take that forward. And realistically, it's going to boil down to Jalen Hurts against Drew Tranquill from the Kansas City Chiefs defense, who plays middle linebacker. And I think that will, or Nick Bolton as well. Those are the 2 key players on the Chiefs defense for that game. But you've got to pound the rock and you've got to try and get Saquon going early. But having said that, that's what the Chiefs are going to expect. So it's really, really difficult to come up with a true game plan against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs have got the ability to change their offense on the fly.
Yeah. All right. So just a little bit of stat for you. I told you before the Chiefs would be in white. The Eagles will be in green, which means that all 5 Super Bowl appearances for the Eagles, they will have been in their green. They have won just once. The Chiefs have been in red 3 times, and this will be white for the 2nd time. They've won 1 Super Bowl in white. The Super Bowl that they won in white was against the Eagles back in 2022. So let's wait and see.
I'm a firm believer in that sort of hokey
pokey. I love a bit of omenship.
Absolutely, and to me, it rings true to. I won't wear certain football shirts on days where my team are playing. I rarely wear my Browns jersey because I don't want to be embarrassed. But yeah, I'm all about the shirt superstition. It'll be and obviously, you know, there's recent history for both of these teams winning Super Bowls in that uniform, so it'll be interesting to see. Ultimately, I'm as much as it pains me to say, I want the Eagles to win, just because the way the Chiefs have gone about it. Not them personally, the way the NFL refereeing decisions have gone about it have bailed them out. I wanted the Bills to beat them, but no, they're just that team everyone loves to hate. They're basically the Patriots of the 2020s. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Right, we are going to talk more about some head coaching movement, which has gone on in the last sort of 7 days since we were last bringing you an Utter Punts podcast. There's also been stuff that's happened this afternoon that we'll try and reflect on as well. All of that coming up right after this. If you're anything like us at Utter Punts, we love the fantasy games surrounding the NFL, but sometimes they're a bit too focused on their American audiences. That's why we were blown away when the Fantasy Game Day app rolled into town, a weekly fantasy game with player values in pounds totally dedicated to the NFL's UK audience. There's insights and analysis and plenty of opportunity to compete with your friends, but the best bit, weekly cash prizes. Use code PUNTS when you sign up for a free entry after you play your first week. Welcome back to Utter Punts. We said we would talk about some coaching movement on the merry-go-round that is the NFL. The one that has broken today, according to Ian Rappaport, is that Matt Eberflus looks to have, he's gone to the Cowboys as the new defensive coordinator. So a step down from him from head coach to defensive coordinator. What do you make of it, Jim?
Who cares?
Yeah.
to be frank, the Cowboys have, you know, I think the writing was on the wall for the Cowboys in free agency.
Brian Schottenheimer, they've appointed as head coach.
I think we can trace it back to the last off season where they effectively sat out the entirety of free agency and got no better. And, you know, I think if you watched the Cowboys the season before, most people could probably see this sort of fall coming, especially with Dak Prescott missing the majority of the season. And that's now put them in a situation where they've got a journeyman offensive coordinator as their head coach in Brian Schottenheimer, who I don't think is a good hire. He's to my knowledge, he's been fired at every stop that he's been to.
I have a little bit of news about that, mate. I had a missed call from Dallas, and it was after that they appointed Schottenheimer. I sent Jerry Jones a letter saying that I'd watched every play of every game. Can I have a job? And I think he bought it.
It wouldn't surprise me. No,
it's what worked for Mike McCarthy, eh?
So yeah, they've gone. The Cowboys have gone from mid in Jason Garrett to mid in what's his name? The last coach, Brian McCarthy.
Mike McCarthy.
Right. I'm doing a Dave. And now they've gone to below mid with Brian Schottenheimer. So in order to round out that, that complete circle of ineptitude, they've then gone and got Eberflus from the Bears as their defensive coordinator, who, if anyone watched the Bears last season, they were playing from behind in every game, and most games, when it got to the second half, they were 20 points behind. Some of that was on Caleb. But at the end of the day, if you're conceding 21, 23, 24 points a half, you're not going to win many football games. So I think it's not really an interesting hire. It's a laughable hire, the same as Brian Schottenheimer's a laughable hire, to be perfectly honest.
With Eberflus, he was the defensive coordinator at the Indianapolis Colts, who were going through the process of firing him when Ryan Poles offered him the head coaching job in Chicago. And interestingly, the only link between those two individuals is their agent.
But we're going from an inept franchise in the Bears to an inept general manager in Ryan Poles to an inept franchise in the Dallas Cowboys and an inept general manager in Jerry Jones. So, I think Matt Eberflus should fit right in the chaos. And genuinely, I don't know what the Cowboys cap situation's like, but it's unlikely to be particularly positive when you're paying Micah Parsons and CD Lamb. So
I have heard this is a master plan for them to get Arch Manning. They've got to finish bottom 2016 and 2027. So he's going the right way about it.
20, yeah, I mean, look, maybe, but I don't think that's the case when you paid Dak Prescott $230 million guaranteed on a $240 million contract. So Dak Prescott's there. He'll improve the Cowboys next year when he comes in. They can't get much worse. But ultimately, they can't afford to sit out free agency. They have to hit on draft picks, which they haven't done for a couple of years. But even then, I mean, Brian Schottenheimer's going to come in. He's going to run the same offense that he ran at the New York Jets. He's going to run the same offense that he ran at the Rams, that he got fired for. So ultimately,
same coaching, scouting staff that Jerry's been using for how long?
Well, this is it. The Cowboys' biggest free agency move last year was re-signing Ezekiel Elliott, who averaged 3 yards per carry. So it's just that that franchise as a whole is a little bit in the doldrums. It's not showing a particular uptick and how it's going to come out of that. It feels very similar to my Cleveland Browns in that sense, and I don't think the Cowboys fans will thank me for that. But ultimately, there was a game early in the season, and it was just a comedy of errors between the Cowboys and Browns, and both teams really fulfilled what little potential they had for the rest of the season. And to be honest, the Browns could turn it around. I think they've got a coach and a head and a GM who actually know what they're doing. The Cowboys don't. So I think this is going to get worse before it gets better for the Cowboys. It really wouldn't surprise me if Schottenheimer's one and done.
I've got nothing more to say on that situation. What else do we need to talk about? Do we need to talk about
Liam Cohen doing a flip-flop in Florida?
Oh, that was class. So last week we were talking about the fact that Liam Cohen had turned down the Jags because of Trent Baalke. They'd fired Trent Baalke as a result, and then basically he went AWOL for a day from the Buccaneers and turned up in Jacksonville and signed on as the head coach, which has left a very bitter taste in Tampa Bay. But he, through his agent, claimed that he was strong-armed into agreeing to become the highest paid offensive coordinator in NFL history. So I don't really know about that one, how that's going to go. And yeah, we'll see, won't we? But it doesn't look good from the start, to be honest.
Speaking about money, I was reading yesterday that the Ohio State college defensive coordinator has just left them to go and be the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, a conference rival in college football, and will be paid $3.1 million a year to be a college defensive coordinator, which I thought was quite astounding, to be honest with you. But when you start rolling in the fact that there were rumours that Ben Johnson wanted $15 million a season to be a head coach last year, I suppose this is just the way that it's going. And I mean, if that's the case, Andy Reid must be worth so much money. It's unbelievable.
It's got to be on like 80 mil a year or something ridiculous.
Oh yeah, Neymar Saudi money.
Did we talk about Ben Johnson last week when I wasn't here?
We touched on it, but there's been a few developments since. He gave a press conference where he confidently basically said, look, I'm joining a division where there's Dan Campbell and Kevin O'Connell, two coaches who will probably end up going into the Hall of Fame, and maybe it's a very competitive division. But to be honest with you, I enjoy beating Matt LaFleur twice a year.
They're not friendly, are they?
They are not friendly, apparently. It's the kind of thing you say to a mate or to a mate's mate or to someone who you're confident you're going to have a solid relationship with. Yeah, but you don't basically go into your first head coaching job and in your first press conference decide to pick a fight with the team who are closest to your team in the table. And I think that's what he's done. He's gone, right, they're in range, so they're my number one target. But if you're aiming for third place, I don't think that's particularly ambitious. But I also saw Caleb Williams' reaction to the signing of Ben Johnson.
Did he paint his nails a special colour for him?
And he had a magnificent trench coat. There's probably a few images of it, and yeah, okay. I'm very happy with JJ McCarthy.
We know you say it you say it minimum once a week, and then when these people don't see when I'm sat next to you at yours on a Saturday, how much you bang on about that guy. But having we say that in jest. Ben Johnson,
it's true.
Look, yeah, I mean Ben Johnson. To be perfectly honest, it could go either way. He's got no head coaching experience. A couple of years ago, he was fired as the Miami wide receivers coach before he got picked up by the Lions and worked his way to offensive coordinator. So I think Ben Johnson's a little bit more of the unknown than maybe people want to acknowledge because they're searching for a saviour. Caleb was supposed to be the saviour in Chicago, and now Ben Johnson's been tabbed as the saviour for Caleb, so he can be the saviour in Chicago. So I think there's bits and pieces running there. And I'm sure he did scream in excitement at the hiring.
Screamed in excitement.
That says
that's his own words.
That says a lot.
That's his own words. Look. I mean, it's one of those. We live in a different world, but yeah. I mean, I think there's elements to him that need to mature.
Will we see a decline in Jared Goff now Ben Johnson's gone to the Lions? I suppose.
I hope so.
I think so.
I hope so. I mean, only because we're in our division. I think most people quite, kind of love the Lions, but I am hoping that having lost both their coordinators, including Aaron Glenn, who's gone to the Jets, it should be difficult. We saw what happened when Philadelphia lost both of their coordinators after their Super Bowl run. And the following year, they had Sean Desai at defensive coordinator. They've now got Vic Fangio. They had a guy called, I think it was Ben Johnson, but not the Ben Johnson. And now they've got Kellen Moore, yeah, who's a former OC for both the Cowboys and another team, and
Chargers.
Yeah, and he's basically. I didn't expect him to be able to come in and run an offense quite so efficiently as he has done, because he's always been a very pass happy OC. So his adjustment is highly impressive. So yeah, I'm interested to see who it is that the Lions do now bring in as their new DC and OC. I have heard.
I can tell you the answer to that question if you'd like to know. The offensive coordinator is John Morton, who was previously Detroit's linebackers coach. That's Shepard. Defensive coordinator is Kelvin Shepard, who was previously the linebackers coach. And the OC is the previous passing game coordinator at Denver, John Morton.
Interesting.
You can't argue with that with the success that he's had with Bo Nix this year. To be
no, you can fully understand it, but you would also kind of look at the fact that Sean Payton's there and probably did a lot of the heavy lifting with Bo Nix, I'd imagine. I'm interested that they're promoted from within with the defense, because once all of their players are back, I think anybody could be a good defensive coordinator with them. But I'm intrigued to see what happens with a guy who I don't think has ever called plays before, calling plays, because Dan Campbell won't be calling the plays. So it's going to be an interesting change in Detroit.
I think for those that are analytically minded, I think this year will be a pretty good, it's almost a good test, because in previous years it's always been the big name coaching hire and then bringing them in and then putting talent in there and then maximising the talent to turn it around. This year, there haven't been many. Ben Johnson's the biggest name coaching hire that we've seen. The rest predominantly are retreads or have been or not flashy hires. Aaron Glenn at the Jets is not a flashy hire. So it's almost that trade-off between you go with a superstar coach and general manager who's come up through the system, or you go with a little bit more of a low-key hire, like the Lions did when they hired Dan Campbell. And you're then relying on your players lifting the team up around you. So, and I think Dan Campbell's really come into his own as a head coach since he's been a head coach. But certainly when he was hired, I don't think anyone was expecting the Lions to be 2 games away from a Super Bowl 3 years down the line. So I think this it's going to be interesting to see what happens with some of these more low-key low-key hires. I think there's been probably more defensive hires than we've seen in quite a long time. Everyone wants the flashy young offensive coordinator coming up, because most of the time if you're firing your head coach, it's because your offense didn't work very well. So again, I think this is going to prove an interesting sample for years to come, and we may start to see a switch in that offensive coach versus defensive coach going forward. We referred to Steve Spagnuolo at the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is a prime example of, if you can get a top defensive coordinator in there, you don't necessarily have to have the defensive player of the year, which the Chiefs don't have. You don't have to have the best corner. They've got a top 3, but they haven't got the best. Their linebacker core is pretty good, but he maximises that talent that are in there. And again, that's what we saw with Glenn with the Lions. We saw it with Ben Johnson on the offense, and now they've taken their talents elsewhere. But the thing with the Jets is, there was defense really. They need to get the defense humming again, because it was bad after Salah left. But the offense was a mess, and Aaron Glenn's not going to be involved in that. So again, it's just going to be really interesting to see if some of these bad teams stay bad, or if their coaching decisions that they've made, despite not being massive splash headline coaching hires, whether they physically do what needs to be done and turn the season around, turn it around for them.
We have been calling, though, haven't we, for not the same old people again and again. So maybe these not big name appointments might actually be exactly what the game needs.
I concur. The Jags are now appear to be getting their act together a little bit as well, because they're currently trying to interview Aubrey Pleasant, or Nice Boise for those who remember Only Fools and Horses. Aubrey Pleasant is the former defensive back and passing game coordinator for the Rams, who this season, in order to keep him, got promoted to assistant head coach, and he appears to be favourite for the DC role in Jacksonville. Now, where you've got someone like Sean McVay respecting someone so much that they're willing to promote them within the organisation to keep them around, that, I would argue, is exactly the kind of person that you should be looking to poach. And I definitely don't think he would have been on Trent Balker's radar. So
they're also talking to Durante Jones, aren't they? The Vikings pass game coordinator. He had an interview as well with the Jags, I think.
What, the defensive backs coordinator? Or okay,
yeah,
cool.
DB's coach, yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. He's done a very solid job with not that much talent to play with there. Obviously, he had more talent available to him at the start of the off-season, but things happen. And we had to bring in Gilmore and Shaquille Griffin, who both did really, really good jobs, but probably won't be back with us next year. So
just on Viking coaches, Brian Flores has been left at the altar again.
Suing the league, mate. He's not going to get anything.
I agree with that. I just think it's quite bold and brazen by these billionaires to invite him for interviews, because by all accounts, he's interviewed for 3 head coaching jobs this season. He's interviewed for head coaching jobs in previous seasons, and he's getting absolutely nowhere. So all the teams are still ticking the Rooney Rule, which is what they needed for him, which is what they need him for, and it's exactly what he's suing the NFL for as well. But seem to have very little intention of actually hiring him. So I think to be honest, these teams' loss is definitely the Vikings game. He's transformed the Vikings defense from where it was before he got there. And you'd think it's only going to be a matter of time, but I don't actually think. I think Dave's right. I don't think he's going to get a job as a head coach while the litigation with the NFL is outstanding. And by which point, if the Vikings defense sees a step back next year,
okay, I have an opinion on Brian Flores.
No kidding, I'm shocked.
So Brian Flores, year 3, with every previous other stint, has finally got his defence the way he wants it. So there's a pattern with him. His first year as DC with the Patriots, it was all right. The following year they were dominant. I think it only took him 2 years with them. When he went to the Dolphins, whose defense was in a similar state to the Vikings when he took over, year 1 he stabilised. Year 2 you saw a marked improvement. Year 3 they were dominant on that side of the ball. I'm delighted he's getting year 3 with the Vikings. I think after next year, if he still is not getting a job as a head coach around the NFL, I think he's probably got reason to sue again, because I do think that with the way we're set up for free agency, and the way that Kwesi appears to love him and want to make sure that he gets everything that he needs, as he showed last off season with Van Ginkel, Grenard, like a variety of players were brought in just to make sure that Flores was in a good place, and that was when we were eating 68 million worth of dead cap money due to Daniil Hunter, Kirk Cousins and another player who I can't recall right now. So yeah, I think Flores, whilst he didn't get what he wants, he might have got what he needs, a third year in Minnesota, and then he'll be gone, because I think that he's doing a cracking job with that defense, and all of his rough edges that previous players have spoken about, not just Tua. I think Fitzpatrick as well. Fitzmagic, he mentioned in the past that he had a problem with the attitude of Brian Flores. I think a year with the Steelers under Tomlin, who's a great man manager, and then in the O'Connell culture for 3 years, by the time he leaves us, he could be in a position to maybe not just turn around and tell the quarterback
if he
no
leaves
good.
you, let's be frank, right? You telling me you'd hire Brian Schottenheimer over Brian Flores? Not in this lifetime.
Oh God, no.
And I think you can look at a few of the head coaching hires and go, and I appreciate the Pete Carroll hire with the Raiders is been universally praised. I agree with that, but Pete Carroll is pushing 70, if not over
73, mate.
Yeah, exactly. The reason the Seahawks put him out to pasture is for that reason. So he's a short term. In theory, he's a short term fix for the Raiders. And you look at it. Brian Flores is mid-40s, and he's got head coaching experience. He's basically quarterback to one of the best defenses in the league for the last 2 years. You just start to look at this, and something doesn't quite smell right with the Brian Flores piece, and it is that legal issue that he's got with the NFL, which I think he's just being proven completely right again. So to be honest, I fully. Allegedly. And but I do think Brian Flores is effectively laughing all the way to the bank, and will be for the foreseeable future.
I love leaving a podcast on a potential legal ramification. NFL solicitors, we are at PO Box No.
Allegedly. Personal opinions expressed, and allegedly.
Look, we will be back next week on Utter Punts. We're looking maybe Wednesday or Thursday. We're just trying to get some ducks in a row to do our full Super Bowl preview. That'll be pretty much an hour of us looking ahead to the Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. We will give you everything that you need to know in that. For the meantime, we've just about hit the hour mark. So Jim, thank you very much. Dave, thank you very much. And we will see you next week on Utter Punts.